Welcome to Podcast Without Pretense. Where are the other two heads?
Well, you didn't do it previously, you jerk.
That was previously. It happened already.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Strickland.
I'm Ayaz Akhtar.
I'm Eric Sandine.
And together, we don't know what the fuck we're doing.
We're throwing out conventions today. Fuck convention.
We have an amazing producer, though.
We do have an amazing producer. Yeah.
Off the cuff. Awesome.
We, Eric, you hadn't finished the movie yet either, have you?
No, I started it, and it was horrible.
It is. It is. It is hard to watch. Have you gotten? Let me ask you this, Eric. So this is the movie that we chose to watch, which we will not be talking about in this episode because none of us have finished it yet. Is called Robin Hood: Ghost of Sherwood. Eric, have you at least reached the point where Robin Hood has been killed?
No. Yeah.
I have Me neither. Me neither.
Oh man, it was pretty bad.
The plot of this movie is supposed to be that Robin Hood is killed and his merry men are killed by the Sheriff of Nottingham's men, and then Maid Marian and Little John use some means to bring them back from the dead. When you finally get around to watching this, prepare yourself for about a 20-minute long conversation about social inequality, but delivered in like the most dull, wooden way possible.
So it's like Star Wars Episode 1?
Yeah, no, it's like Star Wars Episodes 1 through 3.
Oh, jeez. Okay, all right.
Take all the action sequences out and all the long Senate sequences and boil that down into a very wooden Robin Hood telling a very wooden Maid Marian why he and his men steal from the rich.
It sounds like a one-liner to me.
It
doesn't seem like you just spent 20 minutes on it.
I actually started taking notes on this. I know I said I wasn't going to talk about this movie, but I kind of have to do this a little bit. I started taking notes on it, and one of my notes is something along the lines...
Actually, wait.
It's true.
Let me say this.
There's nothing requiring you to do this. I would like you to do it, but that's an absolute utter lie.
Definitely not in the bylines.
I have to, or I will go crazy. We talked about insanity earlier. I've got to exorcise this demon. One of my notes literally says something along the lines of, "Oh Christ, they're still talking about this." Also, Maid Marian has the most amazing line delivery I've ever seen in a film ever. It is phenomenal, but we'll get into that when we actually talk about the film. Maybe next week. Who knows? We'll see. So, since none of us... we can walk away. Ayaz has to at least watch some of it.
That's true.
You've got to at least watch some. But if it comes down to where all three of us are like, yeah, I got like 17 minutes in and I said, I am not doing any more of that, there's nothing wrong with that. It would be a first. I don't think we've ever had a movie where all three of us stopped before the end.
That's true. Yeah.
I'm not going to complain if it's this one. I mean, I might go ahead and try and... I'm going to at least get to the goddamn part where they die.
Here's the thing. I'm going to have to find a way. I have a long plane ride coming up next Thursday. I fly out back to Baltimore. So it's possible I'll be the one to finish this. I'll be very confused and angry on a plane.
Hang on a minute. Next Thursday? So you mean after the next episode of Podcast Without Pretense?
Well, if we did these weekly, then that would be true.
Yeah, we kind of fell off on that whole streak thing that we were going so strong on at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016.
Well, yeah, we can rework on that. And even if Eric doesn't watch the movie, I mean, the idea that he might finish it at that point still could be true. Maybe he'll get like half the way through. We talk about it next week because I have to watch this movie now. Because here's the weird thing. The more you talk this movie down, the worse it sounds, the more interested I get. And this happened the last time we watched the movie, which I can't remember what it was called. What was the movie we watched last time?
444.
Oh,
yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
It was so that was the movie where Jonathan, you said we could give up on, right?
Yeah. I said you could take a pass on it.
Yeah.
Not just
and
give
that
up
made it
on
more
you
intriguing.
you could skip it. Yeah.
Yeah, Jonathan gave us a free pass for a movie, and none of us took it. Why did that happen?
Because it sounded like it was so bad you had to see it at that point.
Yeah.
And then I think the pass would have been better time
It
well
was
spent.
pretentious bad. It was pretentious bad. That's the worst kind of
bad.
pretentious and ultimately not interesting. That's the killer combo there.
Yeah.
But this film is it's shot on like a 4K digital camera.
Like a GoPro?
What's that?
Like a GoPro?
No.
Like a D60.
It's
D60?
decent. It's decent quality, except that it's very clearly digital video. Right? There's no mistaking it for any other kind of presentation. It doesn't look at all film or cinematic. Like, it doesn't look anything like that. It looks like digital video, and the composition of some of the shots, that's probably the best you're gonna see. Like, this is gonna be the top mark of quality for this film, and everything else is gonna slide down from there. It could be called bad lip reading the movie, because it looks like every line of dialogue was done in ADR.
Oh,
I could survive that.
you
I
can
just probably
survive
want to look
that?
up.
You're
I
the
just
one
said I
who
could.
never wants to watch movies with subtitles or dubs.
No, wait a minute. Now, wait a second. I don't want to watch subtitle movies because I have to then pay attention to what's actually being shown on the screen. Dubs I don't like with like anime and stuff because I actually want to watch the anime, and so I will read the stuff on the screen. It's totally different game here. Totally different.
So wait, I have a question for you.
Yes.
I have a question for you. The whole purpose of us doing this experiment is to try and devote our full attention to something that obviously doesn't deserve it. So you're telling me that you don't like to watch dubbed movies because it forces you to pay your full goddamn attention like you're supposed to in the first place?
Now, wait a second. Now there's a starting point. We used to do this where no distractions, no nothing, no second screens, no people, no alcohol. But after the point where you break, you didn't have to pay as much attention.
That's true.
So
well, you can just
rules.
walk away. That's the thing, is that
But
you could just say,
see how they
of course,
turn out.
Yeah.
we would know at that point, though, if we had any movie where it was subtitled, we'd be like, well, as soon as Iaz checks out, that's it. He's walking off into the sunset on that one.
That's true. Oh, by the way, we do have to finish this movie very quickly because, like I said,
Oh,
on
Jesus
Twitter,
Christ.
to you guys,
Oh God, so fucking close.
it's coming
Oh,
March
no.
12th on Hulu. That means everybody here who's got Hulu
Yeah. Yep.
can watch Kirk Cameron's Saving Christmas. And there's no way in hell I'm not picking it.
I have a feeling that Eric and I both were worried about a totally different thing that's coming up pretty quickly. Episode 150.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
I
the
think
return.
Saving Christmas might be big enough that it pushes Rock and Roll Frankenstein off to episode 200.
Oh, we can move.
Okay. All right. That's fine. That works.
Okay.
That works. So I didn't think I would ever say this. I really didn't think I would ever say this, but Kirk Cameron, please continue to make movies.
I would like Kirk Cameron to make movies that are better than the Nick Cage versions of these movies.
That's already happened.
I know,
Yeah,
just to continue doing it, because I want to see Nick Cage Saves Christmas next. Okay?
Oh, that would be amazing. Oh, so meta.
Actually, that would be amazing.
So meta.
You say it would be amazing, but we've seen the Nick Cage Left Behind. We know that there's just as much potential for it to be just uninspiring and dreadful to sit through.
Yep.
Not
Well,
like
they
fun.
ruined the story. They ruined the story.
It was ridiculous. There was so much nonsensical action going on of like, I'm gonna go and try to kill myself now because everyone's gone. This girl's able to run every which way without breaking a sweat. I'm like, I kind of appreciate the amount of nonsense of this movie. I like
Off
that.
the bridge. Yeah. Oh, also the fact that a plane was approaching what, like a gas tanker at the end or something, and that was the big deal. I
I
don't
think the
remember.
most important part of that movie is where we got to see the family portrait that clearly had a different person standing in for Nick Cage and just had Nick Cage's
Bad
head
Photoshop.
photoshopped on top of it. That's the most
We actually
important part of that film.
somebody in the
That's
chat
true.
room said you guys should film yourself watching it Shia LaBeouf style. So all we got to do is meet up in one place and
We
watch
don't even
something.
have to. I can figure this out. But there is a Chrome extension for
Mhm.
Netflix Party, which I just found. I don't know, the other day.
Yeah, but when
But
Jonathan's
yeah,
connection,
so like,
when his connection invariably drops because of Comcast, or my connection craps out because I'm using an Apple TV, or whatever other reason happens, we got to keep resetting the damn thing. Plus,
But Ayaz, come on! I got that thing in the mail that explained how
Sure.
Comcast is so much better than Google Fiber.
do you have that letter available? That
It's
postcard?
back. It's back in another room. But
I would assume it's been shredded at this point, or are you saving it?
no, I'm saving it. I think I might frame it when I get Google Fiber installed.
Maybe we should
Yeah,
explain
that's-
exactly what we're talking about.
All right, so this was actually in the news back when when Comcast first started sending these postcards out. But Atlanta's one of the places that's getting Google Fiber. In fact, there's some apartment complexes that have it already. I live in a townhouse, and our townhouses we haven't seen Google Fiber get run through this neighborhood yet. So no telling if they will come through here. Or if they do, if it'll actually reach to where my house is. I hope it will. But Comcast preemptively, in an effort to try and convince customers to stay with Comcast or switch to Comcast rather than to go to Google Fiber, has sent out these postcards claiming that Comcast's service is superior to Google in multiple ways, one of which says Comcast can deliver faster speeds than Google Fiber, which is true if you're willing to spend $300 a month.
Yeah.
But Google Fiber is $70 a month. So you're like, well, okay, how you're talking about more than 4 times as much money per month. How much faster is the service? Well, ideal
Statements
speeds
are
would be
relatively true, but not honest.
They're misleading. They're misleading. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you were to go with that higher end service, your speeds would be about 3 times faster than Google, assuming that both services are running at peak efficiency. But you're spending 4 times as much per month in order to do it. So it doesn't make sense from a financial standpoint. And there are all these other things that it argues, like you'll have access to more Comcast programming. Well, whoop the shit. I don't care.
I'm looking at your tweet. And it
The
looks
photo.
like a postcard. Yeah, it says, "Don't fall for the hype. Google Fiber can't deliver what Xfinity can." And then it's the fastest in-home Wi-Fi. This is Xfinity, and a little space for a checkbox, and Google Fiber. Xfinity, of course, has its beautiful red logo, and there's a nice blue check mark that's so fun that it doesn't actually go in the box; it's near the box because it's like a person did it. Okay.
Yeah.
The next one says 9x more or 9 times more free TV shows and movies on demand. Xfinity gets the little check. DVR recordings to go. Xfinity gets the check. X1 voice remote, which is like their own technology. They might as well written cable box.
Has anybody used a voice remote, by the way?
I actually have used the X1 system. It's actually pretty good. So I will say
The
that. It
voice
actually has a-
remote? Have you
I've-
searched?
Yeah, so here's the thing. So like my brother had something on Slingbox. So he had his box on Slingbox in Philadelphia. And I was watching something like in California. So it's just painful to change the channel. So he gave me the X1 remote, the app, and I would be like, change to USA. And it would do it. I'm like, well, that's pretty cool.
That's actually pretty cool. All right.
So that was legitimately
I
cool. So
rescind
like,
my comment about the voice search for the Xbox.
Considering the runaround they gave me when I said, hey, what would it take? Like after I'd had so many problems with the service, and I said, what would it? And I had to switch out multiple pieces of equipment, and I said, what would it take for me to be able to get a cable box that has an HDMI output so I could actually hook it up through my Xbox One? and they told me how much more money per month I would have to spend to do that.
What?
After going through all the because I've got I've got the basic standard definition cable box that doesn't have, it just has coax, no HDMI.
Oh, that's right. I had one of those. Like they sent me like 12 of them because that's what
But I thought surely I just had an old piece of equipment, right? By now the standard has to be HDMI. By now we're out of the goddamn Stone Age. But no,
it's so true.
It's still the basic cable box.
I got one of those from Comcast, and I was like, wait, so, like, I plugged in the HDMI to the TV, because it had an HDMI port, and they're like, oh, you have to upgrade your service. And I was like, to get output that I'm already paying for to be displayed on a device?
It's crazy, because they're acting like standard definition is the actual standard, and it's not anymore. HD is the fucking standard. We got goddamn 4K on the horizon.
Well, and the sad part is my basic cable box that I had from them, because I just got it because the cable with the internet was cheaper. I was like, oh yeah, great. And then I was like, oh wait, I have rabbit ears with the digital antenna. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks great with the rabbit ears.
Yep.
Like, you want to charge me more? No, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, you can get better quality over the air.
And wrapping up our Comcast segment, our regular sponsored segment by Comcast.
Hashtag fuck you, Comcast.
Right. I called up Comcast because I received that $86 bill for the box.
Oh my God.
Right. So I called them up. And I said, hey, because for some reason I was feeling productive. So I called up Comcast. 20 minutes later, I got somebody else.
By calling
I was about to say, you were feeling productive and you solved that problem right away.
20 minutes later, I'm on the phone with some guy on some representative of Xfinity Comcast, or whatever the hell they want to call the service now. And he goes, yes, you have an outstanding balance of $86. I go, yes, I agree with you. I received a piece of mail that says I owe $86. He goes, and it's for the equipment. Can you return the equipment? I said, no, I can't. I've explained this before. Can you do me a favor? He's like, what's that, sir? I go, can you look at the notes? And can you see if it says I have already explained to you that this thing has been stolen? I've paid you off already, and you should not be sending this? He goes, one moment, sir. A couple seconds later, he puts me back off of hold, and he goes, I see that note there. We're sorry about this. I'm like, why do you keep sending this stuff? Because and I was like, there's actually a note there? He goes, yes. I go, good, because I thought I was going crazy because I'm pretty sure I paid you $100. They're like, it says you paid $100. So they're going to refund me $14 somehow. I don't even know how this works on the math, but whatever. So I'm going to get some money back in theory, but hopefully they will stop trying to charge me for the same box 2 years after I settled up with them.
So speaking to that story, my favorite story was when Comcast told me that we're just doing this now. So I canceled my service. I had internet service only with them at one point. And when I canceled my internet service, they sent me a bill and they said, hey, you own us a modem. And I said, no, I've owned my own modem for a long time. It's a Motorola Surfboard S60. And then there was an upgraded one or whatever. But yeah. And they're like, no, that's ours. And I was like, well, could you tell me the MAC ID of the modem you're looking for? 1 second. Let me look that up. Looks it up. Well, that's not the one that matches the one that's connecting right now. Okay. Have I ever connected to that modem? Have I ever used that modem? Well, no, you it doesn't look like that modem was ever activated. Did you ever send me a modem? Well, I can't check that, but I'll just clear this off your account. Comcast literally tried to bill me for my own modem because they literally had my MAC address of my Surfboard that I had owned forever in their system, and they were like, "Oh yeah, he owes us that modem back." So
Well, I mean, I've told this. I told the story before. The thing that precipitated me to switch from Comcast to Clear for like a year and a half, which was when
pretty well
worked better than my Comcast connection was working at that point. Because first of all, the connection I had was so unreliable that I was getting little complaints and stuff on Xbox Live if I tried to play an online game, because everyone thought I was trying to use the standby cheat where you hit a standby mode on your modem and it severs your connection for just a short while, which usually means that, like in a game like Halo, your character will keep running in whatever direction you were running in before until
thing. Jonathan Strickland, advanced Halo player.
Yeah. That's me. So when the connection would reestablish itself, then of course the representation of your character would suddenly disappear, and you would appear on the map where you were locally, but now everyone else could see where you. It looks like you teleported, and it looks like you didn't take any damage because you were not where everyone thought you were. You were in a different place. I was having that happen just because my connection was so unreliable. It was happening on its own. So I stopped playing online.
Best Halo cheat ever, get Comcast.
Yeah, no joke. So at one point, we totally lose Comcast. Like, it's just dead. Cable, modem, everything's gone. And I don't know what the cause is. We had people out there before. This was at our old house. And there was a cable that was laying on the ground from the utility pole. And I was looking at it, I was like, well, it looks kind of like a coax. I guess it could be one. I mean, there are other cables that also look like coax, so I'm not sure exactly what's going on here. So I called and I said, listen, I have no idea if this has anything to do with the cable service, but I can tell you we have nothing coming in right now, and there is a cable on the ground. And they said, well, we'll send an engineer out and take a look at it. And then I got billed for the engineer coming out because it wasn't. Yeah. And I'm like, I never asked for the engineer to come out. They told me they were sending an engineer out. Then the engineer determines that there's no reason to be there and they bill me. And I said, no, this is like a license to print money, because I didn't ask for anyone to come out. I was just saying, like, I don't know if this is the problem. I have no clue where the problem is. I just know I'm not getting any service. And like, how is this ethical? How can you send someone without someone asking for it and then bill them when it's determined that it was not needed? And plus, I still didn't have any service, so my problem wasn't solved. I'm like,
well, this segment was brought to you by our sponsor, Comcast.
Fuck you, Comcast.
Fuck you.
Let's talk about something completely unrelated. I saw this piece of news today. I'm kind of curious what you guys think. There's news today that the Batman versus Superman movie will have an R-rated cut that will be coming out on Blu-ray only. It's not going to be a part of like the theatrical push. Do you guys think that it's kind of screwy that there's going to be two cuts from the very beginning, and the first thing we're going to get is what essentially is not the full cut?
Here's what I think. I think it's total bullshit, because I don't think there's any need for an R-rated cut in the first place. It's a fucking comic book movie film that doesn't require an R-rated cut to tell the story. Look at the Nolan Batman movies. They were dark and they were violent and they were PG-13. How much fucking more violent do you need to get to tell a goddamn Batman story? And not to mention, it's really Batman versus Superman, and Superman shouldn't be R-rated at all, ever.
It doesn't happen. Yeah.
Well, wait, it's not. Wait, you can have wholesome characters that happen to be in an R-rated movie. They can be surrounded by people that are horrible. Like Lex Luthor should be able to say fuck, because like Superman shows up and stops him all the time. Wouldn't you say?
If the delineation between the PG-13 and the R rating is how many times a character says fuck, then it's not worth it.
And the case it was about extended scenes of violence. That's
which
actually the
brings
difference.
me back to my original point, is that the Nolan films were plenty violent and still were PG-13. I think at that point, going for an R rating is just gratuitous. It doesn't do anything to help tell the story in any better way. It doesn't add anything other than gratuitous violence where people are saying, "Oh, now it's not." It's another way to differentiate DC further from Marvel, but not in a way that actually helps them tell a better story.
I mean, I think about it as like if any other movie came out that way. So like if Frozen came out as PG and they were like, "Oh no. But the Blu-ray will be PG-13." What the hell else are they adding to that that like actually makes a difference or that anyone will actually care about? Like
I have so many.
makes no sense.
I have so many jokes that
Go
I'm
on,
not
please
going to tell.
go.
No,
You know what?
no. I'm not gonna.
and-
I'm not gonna
and
be
this-
the second person on the show to blast the C word.
In the interest of in the spirit of Frozen, let it go.
Yeah.
Suncast
Thank
is
you.
mentioning in the chat room that it's because of Deadpool. Deadpool was a rated R Marvel movie. But the
Yeah.
Fox Studios made a killing. But then again, the Deadpool character itself.
Actually, technically, he made lots of killings.
Aha. Beyond that, the amount of money earned by this movie was more than any X-Men movie ever before it. So it could be because of that kind of, hey, wait a second, it worked for them. I don't know if
Which
DC
is
should be.
precisely. It's precisely the wrong reason. It's exactly what tons of people have already said. Like, don't take Deadpool's success to mean that the world just wants super hyper violent superhero movies. What they want are different films. Deadpool was very different from all the other superhero movies that preceded it. That's what people really latched onto, was the fact that it wasn't something like all the other movies they've been watching. I'd argue Guardians of the Galaxy in large part succeeded because of that. It didn't succeed just because I'm sure it didn't succeed because people wanted to find out what a talking raccoon was like. It succeeded because it was very different from the other Marvel movies, and it was entertaining. Like, if it hadn't been entertaining, obviously it wouldn't have done well.
I think it was also a different character. My younger brother, who is arguably not a comic book guy, was super excited about the Deadpool movie because it's a character that he knows about. And so, like, when he learned that there was a slightly sarcastic, angry, not necessarily angry, but comic book character, he went back and read it and went and watched it. He's not going to go back and watch Superman or read Superman or Batman. He's not. But Deadpool kind of speaks to him. So I think there was like a weird audience for that film. I think there was a larger audience for that film than a lot of classic comic book characters.
I think that Batman and versus Superman is just the wrong venue to go for that kind of R-rated approach. First of all, I have argued this multiple times. I feel like Batman versus Superman is jumping the gun way too quickly on having this confrontation between two characters. I likened it to, it's as if you tell someone a punchline, but you don't give them the setup to the joke. I feel like Batman versus Superman is the punchline, and we never got the setup. Like, Man of Steel was not enough of a setup for Batman versus Superman. You only had one half of the character. And hell, the last Batman versus Superman trailer, the final trailer for this film, Superman doesn't say a single line in that trailer. So it's hard to argue that Man of Steel is the setup when your final trailer doesn't feature that character saying a single thing. Wonder Woman has a line, but Superman doesn't. Everything that DC is doing in this approach baffles me. It feels like they are trying to distance themselves so much from the Marvel approach that they are forgetting how to create a compelling universe and story arc in the process. And honestly, I just don't think, like, I like some of Snyder's work, but I think he's off track from what I've seen. Like, so it doesn't look great to me.
What do you guys think of the DC comic Converse All-Stars?
The what?
Converse
That's
All-Star?
exactly what I expected, and some of them are pretty good.
Are these sneakers? Like Converse sneakers?
Converse released the DC line.
Wow.
Well,
You can
all
get
that being
Batman on
said,
your shoe. You can get Wonder Woman on your shoe. Actually, I really like the Harley Quinn ones. They
Now I
look
have
pretty
to look
cool.
this up.
It's good that
Well,
you can
look.
get female superheroes on your shoes because they're already used to being walked all over. So
Oh,
I'd assume they're not on the
Sorry.
sole of the shoe.
They're not
But
on the soul.
I'm not saying women don't have soul. Let's get that straight. That's a whole other thing.
I'm
All
not
that being
saying
said, I'm
that's
really hoping.
Another thing I disagree with.
All that being said, I really hope the movie doesn't suck. As much as I'm kind of down on the concept, and I don't know if they can tell a story in 2 hours and 31 minutes to establish this entire universe. As much as it sounds crazy, I'm hoping they somehow figured it out because it's a rich history of stories there. If they can actually set up a sustainable thing, it'd be nice to see. Not because like I really want to see lots more superhero movies. I really don't. I don't need to see that many. But it's just nice to see options because that might make other companies raise their game and it gets more competitive. If it's a slaughter and Marvel's just far and away greater than anything DC puts out, DC will quit for a while and we'll have to deal with endless reboots. So if they could figure it out now, yay, we actually have a path. Otherwise, we're stuck with like the 8th Batman.
With Marvel, we've already seen numerous reboots too. I mean, it's just the Marvel Disney stuff that's seeming to be really popular, and then the new X-Men stuff is going well. But Spider-Man, Spider-Man's had to be rebooted several times, and we're going to have another one soon. So,
that'll
that's
fix
an
everything.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Actually, and I talked about how Batman versus Superman is, to me, it's a punchline without a setup. The same thing, I could say the same thing about Captain America Civil War. I think, Marvel doesn't get off the hook on this either. I feel like because we never got an Avengers film where the Avengers were really working as a team, consistently throughout the movie, both Avengers films, 2/3 of the movie are all about the Avengers fighting amongst each other. Sometimes literally fighting one another, sometimes just having philosophical disagreements, which you could say sets up the conflict you eventually see in Civil War. But for that conflict to have any emotional impact, I would argue you need to have a sequence where everyone's working together so that when they break apart, it's more tragic.
It's actually,
right now, what it seems like, because right now it just seems like a team that never quite gelled fell apart. I'm like, well, okay. I would rather see a team that is, apart from, a couple of montages where they all seem to be working well together, I'd like to see a team that was very cohesive, and then this series of events precipitates into them breaking up. That creates more emotional drama, and I don't think they've earned it. I don't think there's been enough there. So when you see things in the trailer like Iron Man saying, "I thought you were my friend," I'm like, in both Avengers movies, all you do is bicker with each other.
Yeah. You weren't friends.
I bicker with my friends all the time. Like, that's completely normal.
Right, but you don't question necessarily their fundamental philosophical stance on things, do you?
Not often,
because that's what Tony Stark and Steve Rogers do all the fucking time.
I'm also not working for this big, giant, faceless thing that's going on with a man, actually run by a man with an eye patch.
Hold on.
Okay.
Are you not?
I said I was very specific. No eye patches.
No eye patches.
Okay, there are no eye patches involved where I work.
Hey, I don't work for Discovery anymore. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so we got that part out of the way. I'm also not having to go up against giant alien threats, and all the while maybe questioning all of humanity when you're hanging out with this dude who's a god, happens to be like throwing around thunder and stuff. So maybe Tony isn't all there,
I just would have liked a movie where the conflict completely came from an external source and they worked together, Just one. Like, I don't think they needed to have a series of Avengers films where they're always working together and everyone's in harmony. And I'm not suggesting that internal conflict should be avoided at all costs. Internal conflict is, by its nature, really, really interesting. But it would have been nice to have had one film where they really worked well together as a team.
You want like the X-Men 2 of Avengers movies. We're like, oh, they're actually quite good together.
And then you bring in the conflict where it breaks apart. That's when it becomes more impactful.
And that's why X3 sucked, because the conflict that existed in X3, because I want to go on a rant here, it's Wolverine forgetting how to be a team player. He spends the first 2 movies figuring it out. He's an excellent team player by the end of 2. But by 3, he's just like, Storm, I question your leadership. And Storm's like, you question my leadership. And it just goes back and forth. And it's like, did you guys watch 2? Because he's really good. He's like saving kids and taking care of the team. It's a leader.
I would argue Brett Ratner had a big part to play in how bad X-Men 3 sucked.
Yeah, and also I've heard rumors that
what I love about watching shitty movies, I don't get into comic book or WWE conversations nearly as often when we watch shitty movies.
That's true. That's very true.
Hey, Ayaz, what did you think about Shane McMahon coming back to WWE?
I have no comment about such things because I don't want to put Eric to sleep. Let's talk about something Eric wants to talk about.
It's fine.
Sneakers.
I don't want to talk about anything. Oh,
yeah.
God. Well, did you look at the sneakers? I looked
at the sneakers actually. But see, those are the Chuck Taylor style ones, and they provide no ankle support. And I'm going to twist an ankle in those fuckers. So as cool as they look,
dude,
I have a bad left ankle.
You just got to work on your ankles. Listen, I've been wearing Chuck Taylors for a long time, and what I've learned is that like new people coming to this style, yeah, you're going to break your ankle. It's fine. But okay, so
I've reached the age where style doesn't win over like injury. Also, I live on the 4th floor in a walk up. On the walk up, it might be a little difficult to hobble up all those flights of stairs. Also, when I have to carry a 26-pound bag of dog food on one leg. That sounds like
the Harley Quinn Chuck Taylors look like they're a little too orange.
I just like the orange. That's why
they should be. They should be red.
Yeah, you're right.
Isn't Harley Quinn isn't it red and black, not orange and black?
Red and black. But there's a chance that maybe it's your monitor.
Could be.
Or no, it's very possible. It's orange.
Well, if it's orange, then they fucked up.
At least it's not the Jared Leto Joker, so I'm happy about that for the Joker ones.
I'm leaving.
I mean, I wouldn't wear. I wouldn't wear any of these.
I like the Joker ones because they're subtle. Like I didn't see what it was afar right away until I actually went over the shoe, and you could see ha 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 all over it. I'm like, that's
but then on the other side of it, it's Joker. Like if you look at the opposite view, it's a big picture of Joker's face.
But that's the inner part of the shoe. So
yeah, I mean. Thank God men never cross their legs in such a way that the inner part of their foot faces upward where everyone can see.
That doesn't happen.
Well, you wouldn't do that with these shoes, clearly.
No, that would be crazy.
I do like the exact opposite of that, which is the Wonder Woman ones, where Wonder Woman is straight on the side of the shoe, which none of the other characters are. Is
she straight? I think she's more, flexible.
Sure, yeah.
She's actually on both sides of the shoe.
Oh yeah, she is. Yeah.
She's in action mode on the other side.
Yeah, she's.
Also, anyway. Why didn't they make the laces gold for that one? I mean,
because then you have to tell the truth all the time.
That seems interesting, but I do like the fact that on the tongue they have the logo. That's a nice touch.
You
guys don't care about shoes. I don't care about comic books.
So Shane McMahon on WWE, I mean, that was a big thing, right? Like, just out of nowhere, here comes the money.
Okay, so here's the deal.
I always want to hear about this. I want to know what's going on, but
see, it's kind of like when I hear about comic books. Honestly, Eric, I don't collect comic books. But there are times where you hear enough about a certain thing in comic books you have to ask people, all right, what does this actually mean? Because I don't have the time to go back and buy all of those comics and find out what happens.
At one point where I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go back and watch a bunch of wrestling just so I can like figure this out. And I'm like, oh, there's too much. There
really is. There's well, and especially if you want to understand stuff like the Monday Night Wars, because then you have to watch 2 different brands of wrestling. And technically, if you want to really get a good understanding of what the WWE is right now, you have to look at when it was WWF, you have to look at WCW, and you have to look at ECW to understand it's.
There has to be a Cliff's Notes somewhere where I can just catch up. I just want to catch up. And I will watch.
Well, here's what the Cliff Notes version of WWE would look like. Big Show turned into a good guy. Big Show turned into a bad guy. Big Show turned into a good guy. Big Show turned into a bad guy.
You haven't established who Big Show is and why he matters, and he doesn't matter, which is the problem. The only thing you need to know is that WrestleMania is coming up soon, and they have to have their best storylines. All their main eventers are injured. They've had to scramble like crazy. They have a guy they're trying to promote so badly to be the face of the company. Most of the fans boo him when he's supposed to be the good guy. When the bad guy beats him up, people cheer. They're kind of in a bad situation right now.
This actually sounds amazing, and I kind of want to watch that.
But see, the thing is,
it's good.
it's like watching, in some respects,
that
a
sounds
train
like
wreck,
a presidential election, actually.
Like a presidential election, you can participate, so you can show up and ensure that the good guy gets booed because you can boo him.
Right. Yep.
But it's definitely a very odd period because you don't normally have it going this badly. Actually, it's been the past 2 years where it's been the same guy they've been trying to push down our throats, and everyone's like, no, no.
Here's the thing, Eric. Here's what you got to understand is that it's not necessarily that this guy that they're pushing is a bad worker. He's not a bad worker. It's not that he's bad on the microphone, because when he gets to talk as himself, he's fine. When he has to deliver scripted lines, it doesn't come over very well, but then it doesn't come over very well for most of the roster. So they should really get away from scripted promos.
So, I mean, honestly, it sounds like the reason that, at least you, Jonathan, but both of you really, are good at watching bad movies is because of wrestling.
I mean, it plays into it. But the point I was trying to make is that for these 2 years that Ayaz had mentioned, fans had ideas of who they wanted to be pushed into that role. And for one reason or another, WWE didn't see the person that the fans liked as suitable for that role. So they pushed this other guy instead. And the fans were saying, no, we want guy number 1, not guy number 2. Stop giving us guy number 2. Give us guy number 1. Then guy number 1 goes and gets a career-ending injury. So now guy number 1 is completely off the table. So guy number 2 is pretty much all that they have left at this point. All the other folks who could have taken that place are also on the injury.
All resources behind that.
Well, yeah, and the problem is that the fans are still angry that guy number 2 isn't guy number 1, and that the reason why guy number 2 is the only option is largely because in their mind, the company never put their support behind guy number 1. So even though guy number 2 is pretty much the only viable option, nobody wants to see him. So you're talking about a main event for the biggest event that this company does every year that no one is interested in seeing. And that's
here's the
hugely...
The kicker, sorry to interrupt, the kicker in this largest event is that this is WrestleMania 32 in AT&T Stadium, which is going to have up to 102,000 seats to fill. So if you're trying to do the stadium game...
Wait, so I can get a cheap ticket to WrestleMania 32?
No, Eric, you might not get a cheap ticket. Eric, you might not get a cheap ticket. You might get a free ticket because they do not want that stadium to look at all empty at their biggest event. This is a publicly traded company. They have been known to paper these things. In other words, they give tickets away when they haven't filled up a stadium.
There's a way to get a free ticket. I will go. If the ticket is less than $30, I will go to the next WrestleMania. Because AT&T, right? Like over there.
No. Not the baseball one. AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas.
Oh, yeah. I'm not going there. Never mind.
Yeah, that's different. Oh yeah, if it was in San Francisco.
Why are there
two
AT&T stadiums?
Well, it's AT&T Park in San Francisco, AT&T Stadium in Arlington, and I pay way more attention to this shit than I thought.
Well, yeah, and so the reason why I'm saying Shane McMahon, you need a little more backstory. Vince McMahon, who is the CEO and owner of the company, the guy who took over WWF from his father and turned it into the national powerhouse that it became in the 80s and 90s, and then steadily declined from there. His son Shane McMahon was part of several storylines in the mid to late 90s, and then Shane McMahon started to pursue his own business ventures. By 2010, he had completely left the WWE. He was no longer on their programming. He wasn't part of the show. He was doing his own thing. And this past Monday, out of nowhere, he shows up and essentially lays down the argument that fans have been making for the past year, which is that the McMahons have been running the WWE into the ground, that a bunch of stars are injured, and it's largely because of the way people work these days. Essentially, he's laying down harsh truths to his father and his sister, and it culminates, as the way all logic in wrestling does, with Vince McMahon saying, all right, well, if you want to take control of the company, you get one shot, but you have to win in a wrestling match, because of course that's how all negotiations happen in the wrestling world. And but Vince McMahon says, I get to pick your opponent, and his opponent's going to be The Undertaker, which, you know, obviously one of the most well-respected and hardest working guys who's been with the company for decades. And they're going to meet at WrestleMania in a Hell in a Cell match, which again is like The Undertaker's specialty match. That and a Buried Alive, I guess those would be the two. And so they are going to meet each other. It's also known as a very brutal match. That was a match where Mick Foley lost a tooth and it went all the way through his sinus cavity and out his nose. It's a brutal match. So part of it is just thinking, oh, wow, Shane McMahon's back. And he used to be known for taking tons of punishment in hardcore matches, despite the fact that he was the son of the guy who owned the company. And he doesn't get a cakewalk. He is going to be facing a guy who is known for being a really tough opponent, which means that the stakes are really high. They've got to deliver a really impactful match. And everyone's like, why the hell? Like, do we need this? This might be a little excessive for a guy who hasn't been on TV for 6 years to come back and wrestle a dude who only wrestles essentially once a year, sometimes a couple more. Like last year, he did 3 appearances, not just 1. And anyway, it's just one of those stories that's got a lot of people interested. And the sad fact is, this has got a lot more attention right now from fans than the main event does, than Triple H versus Roman Reigns, that's the title match. People don't care about the title match. They care more about this guy who hasn't been on TV for 6 years wrestling this guy who wrestles once a year. And that's just weird.
And that's the way it is.
Yep.
Next week, we have to watch the movie. So...
it's just like, we can't have Jonathan talk about wrestling again.
No, I don't mind talking about wrestling, but we've talked it to death. Let's do something we never do. Actually tell people that if you want to watch more of this show, because there's something in your brain that says, I want to listen to these guys more, where we talk about movies or comic books, or when they talk about games and I just basically go make a sandwich, go to gfqnetwork.com. We have an archive where we have a bunch of older episodes. When we hit episode 150, we're either going to watch or discuss Kirk Cameron's movie or it'll be Rock and Roll Frankenstein. Go find the episode of Rock and Roll Frankenstein, and you'll listen to how
I haven't
horrified.
listened to it.
I might have to listen to
it.
maybe before episode 150 or before
We should
whenever
probably
we
all
have to watch
listen
this.
to that.
Yeah,
I already did. It was we were so defeated, and that was like the third movie we watched, second or third movie.
had a great title. Still think it had a great title. So gfqnetwork.com. We've got all our old episodes there, and we actually do this show live at 9 p.m. Eastern on Wednesdays. If we do this show at all, we hardly ever move the day or time because it's like if we don't show up on this day, it just doesn't happen. So,
but you should also know that GFQ Network has shows dedicated to the topic of professional wrestling, and they are much more coherent and insightful than what we talk about whenever we actually cover it.
that's true. A lot of the shows are like that. Well, a lot of them.
The
I didn't
shows
say
are
all of
pretty
them.
good, actually. Yeah, they're pretty good.
Yeah. There's actually there's an Apple TV app. There's a Roku app.
But much better than this show.
Although, keep in
Yes.
mind, this is the best podcast of 2014.
Yes, this show is also known as the best podcast of 2014.
We took that
Doesn't mean
title
that's-
in late 2015.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's true. But being also known as, it's like Dr. Dre. He's not a doctor. I mean, maybe he might have a PhD by now. Honorary. I don't know. But he's not an actual doctor.
Probably.
But nobody
To be-
questions it, right?
Also, to be fair, we never said what kind of, what body declared us the best podcast of 2014.
That's true.
Maybe we should start.
I'll set up that
add, like-
website tomorrow. Bestpodcast of 2014.com.
It'll redirect.
We should
to
say we should say it's iTunes best podcast of 2014, but spell iTunes EYETOONS.
as long as we can get iTunes.com that way, and all it has.
If
It's
I
Best
can do
Podcast
that,
2014.
I will, Jonathan.
I am
And it's
sure that URL has to be taken. There's no way that's available.
Or maybe it's TEWNES. I don't care how you spell tunes. Like, just make it work. Make
Maybe
it
it's
do it.
AYE,
I'll figure it out.
like a pirate. iTunes.
In other words, we will have that title of some kind, whether it's going to be the full title of Podcast Without Pretense, also known as the best podcast of 2014.com, which is the best URL. Or some other variant thereof. This show will continue in one form or another. Will we do the same shit? I don't know. Will we watch Rock and Roll's Frankenstein and release our own riff track style commentary and illegally put out a copy of it?
Possibly.
Probably. Probably won't do that.
It's,
Probably happen.
Who the hell is going to sue over that?
well, I mean, if it's just commentary, then there's nothing to sue about. It's only if we were to
engineer this, it's fine.
if we were to include the audio from the movie, then we'd be in trouble.
Fine, we can reenact the whole thing with puppets. Jonathan, you get your sister on it to create puppets of every character.
Keep in mind, there already is a massive puppet in Rock and Roll Frankenstein at the end.
I forgot about that.
And
Maybe
all
we
of the
can do-
puppet pieces could come together to make the rock and roll. This actually sounds pretty good.
Wait,
I'd
so
watch
there was
Actually,
a
if we
thing-
can get action figures of all the rock and roll stars that are supposed to make up the Frankenstein one, and then super glue them together.
I would love the making of. We'd have the toy like on a butcher block and a giant cleaver. Here's the arm.
What
But we're not
would be
gonna
even
talk
better
about
is if
Liberace.
it'd be even better if some of them were 5-inch figures and some of them were 7-inch. And some were so all the parts were wrong, the wrong size, the wrong scale for each other. That'd be awesome.
I like
An
where this is
enormous
going.
Elvis head and tiny little Jimi Hendrix hands.
Oh man, I don't know if I have that much time, but something will happen. Maybe we will release a limited edition Rock and Roll Frankenstein toy. Or a
Which
3D
is not. It's not
Yeah, no,
guaranteed
just-
to
we'll
arrive
just
in
remove-
one piece.
Release the 3D mock-up so people can print them
right,
out.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
We'll make it in SketchUp or something, and people can just download it and print them like crazy. You can have your own Rock and Roll Frankenstein.
The sad thing is, even with my rudimentary artist skills, I'm pretty sure it would still look more convincing than the various rock and roll parts that were supposed to be part of the monster in the first place.
What
Like
if,
that guy only barely resembled Elvis.
yeah, and they stole parts from like jars. Maybe we just have the 3D mock-up of the jar. There you go.
Oh,
Or
the
just
two different
each part at
pieces?
different scales, and we're just like, you scale it and print it. We don't know how it fits together.
I like this idea. There's some stuff happening by episode 200 where we're releasing limited edition action figures. One step at a time. We gotta still watch the movie. We gotta find the movie because I don't know if it's online anywhere. I'm gonna have to go find it.
I don't think
some
it is
other way.
anymore. Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, we should do the thing where we end the show, which is next time on Podcast Without Pretense.
Guys, I can't believe it. There already is a rock and roll Frankenstein action figure.
Okay, so I remember that it's your birthday or forgot that it's your birthday. So I'm saying to everybody now, happy fucking birthday. We good?
Do you know how hard it is to sketch up hands? Like hands. They seem simple, but it's very complicated.